Hello, this is a prepaid collect call from an inmate at the county jail. This call is subject to recording and monitoring. To accept charges, press 1. To refuse charges, press 2.
Well, hello, Sonia. Yeah, I've been talking to your family. They told me what happened, and it's very unfortunate. And hopefully you'll have a good legal team and be able to get through this. But in the meantime, you know what I do as an advocate. I want to make sure that the jail officials treat you properly and that you have the support that you need. And something like this is usually not expected. So you can't really get this team set up before you commit the crime and get arrested. So now is the time to do it before you go to prison. Now remember my old saying, hope for the best, but expect the worst. Oh, no, actually, you don't want to do that in this situation. You want to hope for the best and plan for the worst. There you go. That's more positive. And it applies to what you're going through. So we're going to plan for the worst. We're going to plan for you going to prison. We're going to plan for you getting a long sentence. We're going to plan for medical emergencies. We're going to make plans for things so that whatever goes wrong, you're covered. And whatever goes right, you're covered. Yeah, I know. I just had an incident with my fiance, and because we had all of these stuff in place, we can get this thing worked out, and I'm happy for that. And I like when I run into obstacles because it teaches me other ways to get the job done. And when you're not planning and you're not expecting anything to go wrong, you tend to think things are going to go right, and if you make calls, people are going to take the calls, and if you have an issue, people are going to work with you to resolve the issue. But people who go to prison, they're low on the list. Investigative reporters, government inspectors, health inspectors, advocates. And a lot of times family members are just shunned by these people, and it kind of makes you wonder why. Why would a prison treat people so badly, and then when somebody comes along to try to fix it, to help them out, they'll just run away and hide? Like the old ostrich saying, just stick their head in a hole. And I wish we didn't have to go through that. I wish things worked out the way they do on paper. But let's face it, once you get to that prison, and the women's prison in the state of Washington is the worst. It is a terrible prison, and they'll do everything possible. And this is what you plan for. They do everything possible to make your life miserable and the people who care about you and want to help you. I know. I know you. And we just have to look at the administration. They're very liberal in the state of Washington, and so there's things that they are willing to overlook.
You have 60 seconds remaining.
And that's some of the things that can really get people in trouble. We need to have basic laws and basic policies and procedures. And I don't know if we'll get that in this state, but they do tend to listen to legal matters and matters that are brought to the public's attention. That's one of the advantages to the
You have 30 seconds remaining.
the liberal way of thinking in this state. And we have to use that to our advantage. And so make sure your family has all your legal documents, get your property to them, and then keep in contact. And I know that's difficult now, but do that. Well, good, yeah. I'm there for you, and if you need anything, just give me a call, and I can get messages out to your family. But I'm glad you called.
Thank you for using Inmate Call. Goodbye.
Hello, and welcome to AQS Inmate Call. I am your host, Joel Wilborn. And in this episode, I want to discuss the role of the supportive relationships to somebody who goes to prison. Now, one thing about prison is we think this person knew the risk of going out and committing a crime. And the old standard of a crime is maybe the father is having a difficult time paying the rent, buying food, getting medicine, so decides, I'm just going to go out and sell some drugs, make some quick cash, and I can get these things paid off, and then be good for another 30 days. And a lot of times that works. I've seen that many, many times. But once in a while, somebody gets upset, or a police officer shows up at the right time, and this person gets arrested. And so during the court proceedings, we think, well, this person had some bills to pay and was just desperate. And then, of course, on the other side, you can go out and get a job. You can get assistance from friends and family. You can apply for public assistance. There's all these little things that the person really wasn't thinking about. And like I said in the phone call, you hope for the best and plan for the worst. And every person who's considering committing a crime should think about that. What happens if you get caught? And the problem is they don't think about that. That should discourage them, because if they get caught, they're going to go to prison, or they're going to go to jail, or they're going to get on probation, parole. It could be very embarrassing. And in some cases, it could be the end of their life. And so we, as supportive relationships, have to keep an eye on our family members and our friends to see if there is something that changes in their behavior. Sometimes when you're communicating with a person, there's signs of being suicidal. And you can read this kind of stuff in books, or you can even go to seminars or TED Talks or something, and people will tell you some of the things to look for in suicide. And if you're up on that, you may catch it just when you don't expect it, because you can't expect to go to a party with your friends and there'll be somebody there who's suicidal. It's just, you look for it, and they tend to show up when you least expect it. Criminal activity is the same way. There are signs that a person may commit a crime, and in some cases they'll just flat out say it. And it doesn't necessarily mean you need to be a rat, run straight to the police and turn them in. It could just mean that this person needs to understand that there's other ways of getting the job done besides committing a crime. And that's where you tell them your suggestions and how they can get their situation resolved without committing a crime. But even though they may say, yeah, okay, I agree, I'll try this, you got to let them know the planning for the worst. It's like, if you do this, there's a very good chance that you'll get caught, over a 90% chance, and go to prison. And this is what the prisons are like. And there's a possibility that you won't get the medical care that you need. And that might be the final nail in the coffin for them. It might wake them up. At least that's what we would hope for. But as a supportive relationship, the biggest thing these folks are lacking is the knowledge of an alternative. And when people ask me, how could somebody do something like that, maybe a horrible murder, and we'll never know because we don't think that way. And even if you talk to the person who committed the crime, that person may not completely know. And it could just be something that just snapped inside of them. Or it just could be to the point where they couldn't control their emotions. There's millions of reasons why people do things like that. But to commit such a crime, there's no satisfactory reason. There's really nothing that would satisfy people. And that's the way it should be. You shouldn't have a justified reason to commit a horrific crime. So since we think rational, we need to share that wisdom with people constantly. You can throw it into a daily conversation with folks and say, "You ever thought about what you'd do if you went to prison?" Or maybe you can talk about a recent crime. This person was pulled over for speeding, and then when the officer got up to the car, took off. And you could be discussing that. Why do you think this person would take off doing a regular traffic stop? And it's fairly minor, but why take off? I know I was watching this news magazine on TV, and there was a woman that was in a romantic relationship with the victim, and the victim was murdered, brutally murdered. And so the person was interviewing her, and she said that they called her in for questioning. So rather than just walk in there, she decided to get an attorney. And she told the reporter, "I just didn't trust the police department. I wanted to make sure an attorney was there that I wouldn't say anything that would get me in trouble." Well, they also interviewed the investigators. And the investigators were saying, why would an innocent person bring an attorney to an interview? So you can see both sides, and both people have valid points to doing that. But you have to be careful to keep an open mind in something like that. And I like the way this report was done and how they gave both sides, because with the Department of Corrections, I've noticed there's only one side, and it's their side. And they don't care if you're a supportive relationship. They don't care if you're the incarcerated person. It's their side. And these are people that we care about that's getting thrown into this system. And it's like they're losing from the start unless there's somebody out there to help them. And if we prepare and we expect these folks to be very uncaring, we can get through this. Now, I had a recent encounter with the Department of Corrections. My fiance asked me to order her a coloring book from Amazon. And I ordered the book, and Amazon, like they always do, sent me a notification when it arrived. And then my fiance asked me, have you heard anything on the book? I haven't seen it anywhere. And I started asking the prison officials about it. And nothing came up. They just pretty much ignored me. So the number one thing to do when somebody ignores you is just find somebody who's not. And that could take a little while. But because I had done this so many times and these people constantly ignore me, I know who to go to. And I know how to handle the situation. So I did what I normally do, and I just went to another person or another department. And then it finally got the attention of the DOC. Now, what was interesting about this is I usually get these, well, there's usually two things they do. They just send me some nasty letters or they just ignore me. That's just me personally. Well, I got a letter from the DOC concerning this who gave me advice on what to do and how to clear this up, and actually complimented me, which will forever blow my mind because I did not expect that. And even with following my own advice, that those wise words that's been passed throughout the years, I was hoping for the best, but it just gets to the point where I'm expecting the worst, and I guess that's why I tend to say that a lot. I do expect the worst, but in this case it held true. I hoped for the best, which was that she would get her coloring book, but I expected them to lose it. But the right thing is just to plan for it, and I did. So I get this compliment from them and advice. I followed the advice, and now they're going to refund me the money. And within 6 weeks, this is resolved. And why I have to go through this process, I don't know. And to me, if you're running an efficient department, you want issues to be resolved quickly. And you want, maybe both parties aren't going to be happy with the outcome, but if the one who filed the complaint or one who has the problem is happy, that should be acceptable to the DOC. And I don't know, and like I was saying before, when a person goes out to commit a crime, you don't understand what's going through that person's mind, and even the person who commits the crime may not fully understand why the crime was committed. All we know is what we learned through our experience and what we were taught growing up, and how we're going to avoid crime, because it's easier to get up in the morning and not speed down the road 10 miles over the speed limit, not hit things on the side of the road, not destroy property. It's easiest for us to do that. We may not agree with every law, but follow them isn't impossible. And we can share that experience and that knowledge with people to help them to understand that the crime isn't the best way to solve it. And I wish they would apply that to the Department of Corrections. I don't know why they just figure we're going to do whatever we want, whether it's right or wrong, and there's nothing you can do about it. I'm thinking maybe somebody stole this coloring book, or maybe it was just misplaced. Because there was, when I was talking to the prison officials, there's several things we came up with, and it happened. It's very rare that it happens. It was the first time a package I had mailed there had been lost. And then I sent her a book shortly after, and it got there pretty much the day after Amazon delivered it, which is normal. It's what I expect, and see, I have nothing further to do on that. But the fact that I had to go through all that trouble for an $8 coloring book, it's going to blow my mind no matter what. And we, as the support group, need to understand that there's more than one way to reach our goal. Like the old saying, more than one way to skin a cat. So if talking to them directly doesn't work, and 99% of the time it doesn't, find people to add to your support group that can do something. The Inspector General usually sides with the Department of Corrections, but that office can give advice. The governor's office can give advice. Your local representatives and senators can give advice. Some of them can actually look into it and help you out. Of course, an attorney, the ACLU, and there's advocates out there. And just doing an internet search, you can find local groups that are willing to back you up. And having a medical person on your team, somebody that you can go to for advice, because if your loved one is having maybe a terrible pain in on the joint or something, it's nice to have an idea what that could be so that you could constantly call the prison. And I've had some good encounters when I do call. And that just shows to show that pounding on their door is working. But it's not going to work if we don't do anything. So if you know somebody who's in prison and it's a traumatic experience, they knew the risk, as I said before, but they didn't properly plan. Because you can tell the people that plan when they go in, they're not overly upset. But if your loved one is upset and it's more or less not the I told you so thing to come up, it's more like, I was working with you to try to get this plan. It's not too late. Let's plan for the worst. Let's plan for terrible things. And they have a great fear of the unknown. So they're sitting in this prison with prison officials who most likely are going to abuse their authority and mistreat these folks. And the only help they have is on the outside. Now, right now, the DOC has restricted me from speaking to anybody incarcerated in this state. There are other ways that I can communicate with them, which is fine. I'll use those if I need to. But that's a tool that they tend to do. So you add that to your list. When you're trying to help them, you go by the last thing that you heard from them. You contact the headquarters, prison officials, let them know you need to contact your loved one, and get some reasons. Now, when I filed my tort claim to get my money back, I have to do a notary public to prove my identity. I like that. And with me, they blocked me from using the email service. And they're claiming that I open up accounts with fake names and aliases. Well, that's really not that important, an email. If it was, before opening up an account, people could provide proof of identity, maybe a notary public. But I know during visits you have to prove your identity, and during video visits you have to prove your identity, and paying money through Western Union you prove your identity. So there are ways to prove identity. So to tell me that I'm opening up all these fake accounts that don't require an identity, you kind of wonder why. So to go along with what the other department said with the tort claim, if you're going to accuse me of opening up fake accounts, you should send me a letter that's a sworn statement. I certify that he opened up this fake account. That's good for me in the court system, because I've got all these court issues to deal with now. But if I can get a letter from the Department of Corrections that's a sworn statement, that should reduce all of these false statements. The state of Washington, any state official who sends out a report or a statement that's false, it's a gross misdemeanor. It's a crime. And I can just step up on there. And it's like, well, if every statement you send me is the truth, then why not make it a sworn statement? Why not protect me? And I won't have to fight you anymore if you give me a sworn statement that I opened up this other account. Of course, I know it's a lie. But are they willing to do it? And that's something you guys can do too. You're telling me that my loved one is receiving proper medical attention. Are you willing to send me a sworn statement? As a matter of fact, I'm willing to send you a sworn statement that my loved one told me that medical isn't being properly applied. Medical treatment isn't properly offered within that prison. I can send you that, and my loved one can send you that. Are you willing to contradict us and say that that is? In order to get my money, I have to put a notary public. In order to get things done with the state, you can ask for a sworn statement. Have them put their money where their mouth is. And we can get things done. It's a slow process. Just got to be patient. Keep notes. Talk to people. Get other folks on your team. And to me, this is a way to reduce crime. Eventually, people are going to see what's really going on in prison, and they're going to understand. They can go to my channel, my YouTube channel, and they can see interviews that I do, and I ask people, what advice do you have to have them help prevent people from getting in a situation where you are? And somebody somewhere is going to hear that answer and turn away from crime. And the only way to do it is to keep that communication going and to share that wisdom. And that's why I do this podcast. I want to keep people out of prison. I want to protect our streets. We're not going to do that by locking up people, and executing people, and bogging down the court system. We're going to do that by preventing it. And we prevent it by sharing ideas and talking. And there are great groups out there willing to help folks. There's a Salvation Army commercial where you see this woman who is, she goes to her house and there's an eviction notice, and her child is saying, so, what's going on, Mom? And she's like, oh no, we'll be good. And so she has to grab the stuff that she has, put them in her car, and she's staying in a parking lot, and she's just crying. She's just so upset. She looks out, and there's the Salvation Army truck, and she has this pride. I don't want to go there, but she winds up going there, and then they close the commercial or the public service announcement with the mother and her daughter going into a room and getting a good night's sleep. These resources are out there rather than selling, using, buying drugs, and instead of stealing cars or murdering people. Instead of separating people, we need to bring people together. And it starts with the person you look at when you look in the mirror. Well, have yourself an amazing day and make spectacular memories for tomorrow.